Two astronauts are locked inside a capsule the size of a phone booth. It's spinning. One full rotation every second. Papers fly across the cockpit. Sunlight flashes through the window like a strobe light. Their vision is blurring. Their hands are shaking. In seconds, they will black out. 250 miles below them is Earth. 250 miles of nothing but vacuum. No one can reach them. No one can help. This is the story of the astronauts who were nearly stranded in space. Neil Armstrong is not supposed to be an astronaut. He's a civilian, a test pilot for NASA's Research Center at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Before that, he flew 78 combat missions over Korea in an F-9F Panther jet. He was shot down once. He earned 3 air medals. After the war, he came home and finished his engineering degree at Purdue. But it's what he does next that sets him apart. Armstrong becomes one of only 12 men in the world to fly the X-15. This is a rocket plane. It launches from the belly of a bomber at 45,000 feet and fires its engine toward the edge of space. Armstrong pushes it to Mach 5.74, nearly 4,000 miles per hour. He takes it to 207,000 feet, 39 miles above the Earth. At that altitude, the sky turns black. The atmosphere is so thin that normal flight controls don't work. One wrong move, and the aircraft skips off the atmosphere like a stone off water. Armstrong makes 7 X-15 flights. He earns a reputation not as the flashiest pilot, but as the smartest. The one who understands every system. The one who stays calm when things go wrong. In 1962, NASA opens applications for its second group of astronauts. Armstrong applies. He's accepted as the first civilian pilot in the program. His crewmate for Gemini 8 is David Scott. Scott is military through and through. He graduates 5th in his class of 633 at West Point. He chooses the Air Force, earns a master's degree from MIT, and heads to Edwards, the same base where Armstrong flew the X-15. Scott trains at the Aerospace Research Pilot School, where future Air Force astronauts learn to fly experimental aircraft at altitudes up to 100,000 feet. He graduates top of his class. In 1963, NASA selects Scott for its 3rd astronaut group. He expects to fly in space once or twice, then return to a normal military career. That changes when he's paired with Armstrong. Scott becomes the first astronaut from his group to land a spot on a prime crew without ever serving as a backup first. It's unusual, but NASA knows what it's doing. Scott is one of the best pilots they have. The 2 men spend 7 months training together. Armstrong is demanding. Scott respects him for it. They learn every switch, every system, every emergency procedure. Their mission: fly to an unmanned target vehicle called the Agena, already in orbit, catch it, and dock with it, 2 spacecraft becoming one. No one has ever done this before, and without it, America will never reach the moon. March 16th, 1966, Cape Canaveral, Florida. At 10 a.m., an Atlas rocket lifts off from Pad 14. On top sits the Agena target vehicle, a silver cylinder with a docking collar on one end. 5 minutes later, the Agena reaches orbit, a circular path 161 miles above the Earth. It's waiting. 101 minutes later, Armstrong and Scott climb into the Gemini 8 capsule. The spacecraft sit on top of a Titan II rocket, a modified intercontinental ballistic missile. The cabin is cramped. 2 seats, shoulder to shoulder, instrument panels surround them on all sides. At 11:41 a.m., the Titan II ignites. The rocket shakes violently as it climbs. G-forces press the astronauts into their seats. 5 minutes later, they're in orbit. Now begins the chase. Over the next 6 hours, Armstrong and Scott fire their thrusters in short bursts to adjust their orbit. Each burn brings them closer to the Agena. They track it on radar. When they're 76 miles away, they spot it with their eyes. A silver glint against the black sky. They close the distance carefully. 50 miles, 20 miles, 5 miles. At 150 feet, Armstrong holds position. For 35 minutes, the astronauts inspect the Agena through their windows. They're looking for damage, anything that might have gone wrong during launch. The target looks clean. This is the moment NASA has been waiting for. If two spacecraft can link up in orbit, astronauts can fly to the moon in stages, launch in one vehicle, dock with another, transfer between them. Without docking, there is no moon landing. The entire Apollo program depends on what happens in the next few minutes. Armstrong nudges the Gemini forward, 3 inches per second, slow and steady. The nose of the spacecraft inches toward the Agena's docking collar. Scott watches through the window. The collar grows larger, closer. Click. A green light appears on the instrument panel. "Flight, we are docked," Scott radios to Houston. "Yes, it's really a smoothie." It's 6 hours and 33 minutes into the mission. Neil Armstrong and David Scott have just completed the first docking in space. 2 spacecraft are now flying as one, locked together 185 miles above the Pacific Ocean. For 27 minutes, everything is perfect. Then the Agena begins a pre-programmed maneuver, a 90-degree turn to the right. Scott watches the attitude indicator. The numbers don't look right. "Neil," he says, "we're in a bank." The combined spacecraft is rolling. Armstrong fires the Gemini's thrusters to stop it. The roll slows, then it starts again. He fires again, same result. The roll keeps coming back. They assume the problem is with the Agena. Maybe its attitude control system is malfunctioning. Maybe the software is corrupted. They don't know. They're out of radio contact with Earth, passing over a dead zone between tracking stations. No one on the ground can see what's happening. Armstrong watches the fuel gauge. The Gemini's maneuvering thrusters are burning through propellant fast. They've already dropped to 30%. Something is very wrong. He makes the call. They need to undock. Scott switches the Agena's control back to the ground so engineers can study it later. Then he hits the undock button. Armstrong fires a burst of thrusters to back away from the target vehicle. The moment they separate, everything gets worse. The Gemini starts spinning faster, much faster. Without the Agena's mass to slow it down, the spacecraft whips into a violent rotation. Roll, pitch, yaw, all at once. The problem isn't the Agena, it's them. Thruster number 8 on the Gemini spacecraft has short-circuited. The electrical fault welded the fuel valves open. The thruster is firing non-stop, dumping propellant into space and spinning the capsule like a top. The astronauts don't know this yet. All they know is that they're tumbling out of control. The spin accelerates, 30 revolutions per minute, 40, 50, nearly 60. Centrifugal force throws loose items around the cabin. Checklists, flight plans, procedural charts. They slam against the walls and windows. Sunlight flashes through the glass once every second. To Scott, it feels like a strobe light blasting directly into his face. Both men begin to experience vertigo, a complete loss of orientation caused by the spin's effect on the inner ear. Their eyes start moving involuntarily. They can barely read the instruments. "We have serious problems here," Scott radios as they finally reach the tracking ship, Coastal Sentry, Quebec. "We're tumbling end over end. We're disengaged from the Agena." The spacecraft communicator on the ship is stunned. "What's the problem?" Armstrong's voice is strained but steady. "We're rolling up, and we can't turn anything off." Their vision is blurring. Their bodies are approaching the limit of what they can endure. A few more seconds at this rate, and they will lose consciousness. After that, death. Armstrong makes a decision. The maneuvering thrusters are useless. Thruster 8 is overpowering everything else. The only option left is the re-entry control system, a separate set of thrusters on the nose of the spacecraft, reserved only for returning to Earth. Using it now means ending the mission, but it's the only way to survive. The switch panel is above Armstrong's head, a dozen toggles tightly packed. With his vision swimming, he reaches up and finds the right one. Months of training have burned the location into his muscle memory. He doesn't need to see it. He flips it. The re-entry thrusters fire. The spin slows. He works the hand controller, counteracting the rotation with short bursts. The capsule steadies. They're alive. But the mission is over, and they're still 185 miles above the Earth. NASA rules are clear. Once the re-entry control system is activated, the spacecraft must return to Earth immediately. There's no margin for error. Armstrong and Scott have already used 75% of the re-entry fuel just to stop the spin. Scott's planned spacewalk, a 2-hour excursion outside the capsule, is canceled. 3-day mission will end in under 11 hours. Houston tells them to stay up one more orbit. They need to reach a contingency splashdown zone in the Western Pacific. The original landing site was in the Atlantic, but that's now on the wrong side of the planet. Armstrong and Scott run through the pre-re-entry checklist. They test each maneuvering thruster one by one. When they fire thruster number 8, they finally confirm what went wrong. It's stuck open. It never stopped trying to spin them. Scott loads the re-entry software into the spacecraft's computer. It's tedious work, punching 9 lines of 7-digit numbers into a keypad while still shaking off the effects of the spin. He double-checks everything with the communicator on the tracking ship. Over Central Africa, they fire the retro rockets. Gemini 8 drops out of orbit. They re-enter the atmosphere over communist China, which makes them nervous. The capsule shudders as it slams into thickening air. The heat shield glows, orange. G-forces build again. Flames lick past the windows as friction tears at the outer shell. Then the parachutes deploy. They splash down 600 miles east of Okinawa, almost exactly on target. The time is 10:22 p.m. Eastern, but it's daylight at the landing site. The capsule bobs in the Pacific, rising and falling with the swells. Within minutes, an Air Force C-54 rescue plane spots them. 3 pararescue jumpers leap from the aircraft into the ocean. They hit the water, swim to the capsule, and attach a yellow flotation collar to keep it stable in the choppy seas. Armstrong and Scott stay inside. The waves are rough, swells of 4 to 5 meters. Both astronauts become violently seasick. 3 hours later, the destroyer USS Leonard F. Mason arrives. The ship had been stationed off the coast of Vietnam. It raced at full speed to reach the recovery zone. Sailors lower a ladder. Armstrong and Scott climb out of the capsule and up onto the deck. Their suits are soaked with sweat. They're exhausted, nauseous, but alive. The investigation confirms everything. A short circuit caused thruster number 8 to fire continuously. No warning light existed to detect it. No instrument on board could tell the astronauts which thruster was malfunctioning. Scott later described it simply. The guy was brilliant. He knew the system so well. He found the solution. He activated the solution under extreme circumstances. It was my lucky day to be flying with him. 3 years later, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon.